Hi, my name is Emmanuel Delacruz and I am a Starbucks barista at store 71572. And today I wanted to take a little bit of time to introduce you to an island that has earned the reputation of housing some of the rarest plants and animals on Earth, and also some of the richest soil for crops and plant life to truly thrive. And growing in that soil is the island's biggest commodity, coffee. But I won't just tell you information about the coffee. Together, we're gonna gain a whole new perspective on Sumatran coffee altogether. But in order to do that, we need to brew the coffee, taste the coffee, talk a little bit about our history and heritage with Sumatran coffee, but also talk about something truly special, the way they process it. So, without further ado, this is Sumatran coffee. As previously mentioned, coffee and crops thrive on Sumatra. But why is that? Well, having rainforest and a tropical climate definitely do play a big role. However, a part that plays an even bigger role is volcanoes. You see, Sumatran coffee is grown on the higher grounds of volcanic slopes. And this is because volcanoes erupt nutrients into the soil that are highly beneficial for plant life. Things like phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium. This is only one of the many reasons why Sumatran coffee is truly exceptional. You see, Sumatra is unique in the fact that their coffee plants have 2 harvesting periods, where farmers only pick the ripest of red cherries. After picking, the semi-wash process begins, where cherries are then placed into water, and after the floating defective cherries are then removed, the remaining cherries can then move on to the pulper. Now, the pulper is cranked by hand, and it's responsible for separating the bean from the cherry. And then, after the bean is separated from the cherry, the remaining beans are then laid out on parchment and evenly raked to dry. It doesn't end here, however, because unique to Sumatra, another picking process begins where further defects are then removed. And then, and only then, Sumatran coffee is shipped to places around the world in places like Starbucks. Okay, now it is time to actually make the coffee. And this is a Chemex. And basically, a Chemex is just another version of a pour-over coffee. And the difference between a pour-over as opposed to things like French press is a French press is going to be a lot better at capturing the tanginess, the spiciness, and all of the oils and intensity of a coffee, whereas Chemex is better at highlighting those tangy notes, those spicy notes. So that's why I'm going to be using it today. I want to highlight all of the spiciness that this coffee has to offer, so that's why I'm using it. And without further ado, let's brew the coffee. So when making Chemex coffee, you want to have a coffee that has a relatively fine grind. You want a texture that's almost like granulated sugar. Once you have that, you want to have the filter on the Chemex itself, 3 layers on one side with 1 layer on the other. Then once you have your filter on there, you want to have your hot water. I'm using a ratio of 2 tablespoons per 180 milliliters of water, but today I want a big batch of coffee. I'm going to be using 4 tablespoons with 360 milliliters of water. So let's get it started. You want to get your hot kettle, a gooseneck kettle, and you want to just coat the outside, not the outside, the inside of the paper filter with water. You don't want to do too much water, you want to just coat it lightly. Now what this does is it coats the filter itself and it gets rid of the potential paper taste that you might get with Chemex coffee. But once you have that, just swirl it around and then you can actually dump this water out and then the coffee is ready to be brewed. The key to a really good Chemex brew is a very controlled pour in the water. If you go too fast, the water is not going to properly filter the coffee into the filter itself. The key is to go very slow, controlled, and you want to go in circular motions. Once you have your coffee in there, again, you want to start off slow. Just a little bit of water at a time. And then you want to go in circular motions. Start off by the edge, and then slowly start going into the middle as you're making circles around the coffee. Once all the coffee beans have been coated, you want to let it sit for about 15 to 20 seconds. This is what's called the bloom. Now basically what's happening here is all the gases and nitrogen in the coffee are being released up, and that's why you can see bubbles starting to form. Now, immediately when you're brewing Sumatra, especially in the Chemex way, One thing you're gonna notice immediately is the aroma. Sumatra is very intense, it's very bold, and it has a lot of notes of roasted nut, it's very earthy, and overall it's very intense. It's definitely something that you would drink early in the morning, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's what it's great for. All right, now it is time to start the actual coffee tasting itself. And with any coffee tasting, you wanna start off by giving the coffee a smell. Smelling the coffee and its aroma can give you a really good indication of what you're about to taste in the coffee. And in Sumatra's case, Sumatra is very intense, it's very bold, and its aroma is roasted nut and very earthy notes. Now, for the next step in the coffee tasting, it is time to slurp the coffee. Now, the idea behind slurping is to gather as much air into your mouth to evenly coat your tongue and mouth to give you the best impression of the coffee in all of its notes, spiciness, or whatever flavor it has to offer. So, it's time to slurp. And obviously, with coffee is usually brewed very hot, and slurping also helps to cool down your mouth. This is important for the next step, which is to locate. Where on your mouth do you experience the flavors? As well, what is its weight and its thickness? And in Sumatra's case, Sumatra is a full body coffee, and I'm experiencing the flavors mostly in the middle to back part of my tongue. Now, the next step into the coffee tasting process is to describe. Now, with describe, obviously self-explanatory enough, Sumatra is intense, spicy, earthy, low in acidity, but the way that we brewed it, even lower. We've come this far in the coffee tasting, so let's throw in a great food pairing for Sumatra coffee, a cheese Danish. A cheese Danish is sweet, buttery, and with a touch of tanginess, it pairs perfectly with Sumatra's earthy notes and lingering intensity, as well as its earthy aroma. As well, the buttery nature and texture of the Danish dissolves perfectly in a full body coffee like Sumatra, and the low acidity of Sumatran coffee also allows for those flavors to really blend in. Now, for the best effect, you want to do it in this order: slurp, eat, and then slurp again, in that order to really allow the flavors to blend the best way possible. Sumatran coffee is amazing. It's bold, intense, earthy, and it really goes to show just how far the Sumatran people will go in order to produce the best quality coffee in the world. The passion, the people, and its methods. But it wasn't always this way. You see, at the turn of the 18th century, Dutch colonials first brought wild coffee plants to Sumatra, imported all the way from Ethiopia. And naturally, with Sumatra's thriving conditions, the coffee did amazing on the island, plantations were built, business was thriving, and eventually Sumatra became one of the leading producers of coffee in the world. However, in the late 1860s and 1870s, disease hit the plantations, causing them to be closed down, and the coffee markets as a result were eventually decimated. However, this was not the end for Sumatran coffee, because this setback allowed for the Sumatran farmers to split plantations into smaller farms, allowing for the farmers themselves to control their own crop as well as their own pay. And now today, we are seeing the dream alive again. We are seeing the results of those farmers to this day, because Sumatra is so great. And Starbucks fell in love with it in 1970, and we have been serving it ever since. And it's one of my personal favorite coffees because of its aroma, its taste, and most importantly, its history. And hopefully today, you and me together, we gained a whole new perspective on Sumatran coffee.